Hello everyone, and welcome back to Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we are looking at something Soviet, as you can tell from the little red star on the bow here. And this is the Borodino. I believe at this point upcoming, but I don't know exactly when upcoming and how upcoming, a Tier 8 premium battleship in the Soviet line. If we're looking at the details, it says it was a small battleship project from the early 50s. So this is one of the Stalin didn't accept that aircraft carriers were a thing and insisted on building battleships and cruisers kind of thing. And apparently there was a design concept for what they would call a small battleship. The idea at the point was that it was a bit like je ne calling the whole thing. The idea was to say, instead of building one big battleship, you could build multiple smaller ones, which were individually inferior to enemy battleships, but in groups would actually be concentrating their fire, would use radars and communication systems to coordinate, and the concentrated fire from multiple small battleships was actually superior to the fire dished out by a much larger singular battleship. At least that was the whole plan of the thing. None of this ever made it past the paper stage. At some point Stalin just died, and then everybody had a deep sigh, put it all into bin, and decided not to ever talk about it again. Which means, of course, we now have it in the game. So when I got this ship for testing, and I read the description and said such ships were designed to act in groups and cope with even full-fledged battleships, which means that this is not a full-fledged battleship. This is something that's meant to be taking on enemy battleships in swarms, which means, of course, we're now playing it as a single. Which at very first get me to think, oh no, it's not another supercruiser now, is it? Well, in fact, it isn't. So this is a very peculiar ship. So we'll do this a little differently, and we're actually going to have a look at this visually. So the first thing that stands out, the very first thing that stands out, is this is the small battleship Borodino. This is the Vladivostok. Wargaming. I think you and me have very different interpretations of the term small. That thing is massive. It's honking huge. It's larger than that thing. The Nazonsky, also known as the Lenin. That thing is massive. Okay, so massive battleship. Guns. Let's look. Okay, so we've got a very traditional forward layout of two triple turrets, super firing before the superstructure. We have a bunch of AA guns around the superstructure, and we have what looks like smaller calibers super firing in the rear. What gives? Well, let us look at the comparison between the Borodino and the actual battleship that is smaller than the Borodino, the Vladivostok. The Borodino gets a very interesting set of skills. She does get precise aim, although not as good as the Vladivostok. This is the precise aim 2, which gives you 35%. The Vladivostoks get 45%. She does get the same special thingy with the additional damage control kit, which is generally marginally useful, but well, it exists. She does get radar, not any old radar. This is a radar 3. That thing's got a 9 kilometer range. And she gets 2 charges of it, which is probably a little nod towards the concept that I mentioned earlier, that the idea was that these ships would act in an organized group and use radar for fire control and use advanced communication systems. The Soviets were a little bit behind with these ideas in the 1950s, because the Americans probably looked at it and said, yeah, we've been doing that for 15 years, thank you very much. Well, maybe not 15, but you know what I mean. She does get a defensive AA, which is really funny. And we'll look at that in a second. So, an interesting set of ship skills. the hull, despite being honking massive, actually has a noticeable amount of less hit points than everybody else. 46,048 is not an awful lot. The armor is also kind of more thin. And again, historically, the idea was because... Oh, well, we'll get to that in a second. I need to tell you one more thing before I can get to that point. But okay, just keep that in mind, that it's not as well armored as the Vladivostok. She is a little bit better maneuverability-wise. The one thing that stands out is the acceleration on this thing. Well, I guess 1950s engines or something, but 19 seconds base acceleration for a battleship is not bad. And here we come to the guns. And this is where you do realize, the first thing you realize, yes, you actually have 406mm guns. They did want to stick 457s onto it, but they didn't have any laying around, so they put 406s on it. And you get 2 triple turrets. The Vladivostok has a positively Italian reload after the Soviet tech tree line has, in my opinion, been nerfed into oblivion. This thing with 19 seconds is actually not too bad. And why that is, we get to it. So 6 guns only, 19 seconds. Good range, better range than the Vladi. And over 2,000 main battery AP damage. Now, the shells are the typical Soviets battleship, like a little floaty, and everything except for the Slava, really, work really well at mid-range. Not so much at extreme ranges. The penetration is just not there, but at mid-range they can be quite punishing. The secondaries, and these were the two turrets we've seen in the rear. She's got 180mm secondaries. No, it's not an Atlantico, but she's got 108. These are Nevsky's guns, basically. But she gets 2 twins, obviously not with the same range as on the Nevsky, but still with a very respectable, almost 9-kilometer range. And they do a decent amount of damage as well. Not as much as you would think, given that the Vladivostok's 150s do, well, not that much less, but and they have the same fire chance as the 150s. But we'll talk more about these secondaries later as well. First of all, let me conclude my train of thought from earlier. So, when the Soviets came to the idea of building these things, they said, okay, we're going to need to save some weight and armor and everything. So they stuck a lot of armor forward, because these ships will be fighting bow in, because there was no reason to be broadside. And the 2 guns forward are, if you think about it, pretty much the same firepower like on every other battleship if you put it bow in. With the only difference that even if you're not bow in this thing, then you're not going to get any additional firepower. But with everything else being bow in, you'd pretty much have the same amount of firepower, except the Richelieu at Tier 8, which has 8 guns forward. But then the Richelieu has French dispersion, and this thing has got Soviet dispersion. And I'm not talking about the Kremlin gambling, where you throw a dice, and if it's 3 or less, then your shells land on target. Otherwise, they land in the next map. The secondaries as well are surprisingly accurate and have a very, very long range. And with 6 seconds reload reasonably fast, quicker than the 150s on the Vladivostok. You don't get the auto secondaries because you'd think, okay, well, why shouldn't she get 100mm auto secondaries? Because the Soviets at the time thought sticking large caliber AA on that thing was a waste of large caliber AA and space, because you'd be having cruisers doing the AA duty that were an escort. So you didn't have to. You could put some point defense stuff on it, but that was about it. Which is historically accurate. We have 47 large caliber AA. So somebody probably stuck a token gun or something on it with a 4.2 kilometer range, which is quite significant. But this is why I said the defensive AA is a bit of a joke, because yes, it buffs your large caliber AA by 75%, which is meaningless. It also buffs the small caliber AA, which with 312 is not a bad base value. So you can shoot some things down after they've dropped their payload onto you, as a consolation, sort of, on the way out. The concealment is actually a bit better than on the Vladivostok, which is surprising given the size of this thing. So, what do we have here then? We have a very interesting ship. And my first thought when I was looking at the stats was like, oh goodness, this is going to be a disaster. It isn't. And for two reasons. First of all, like aforementioned, if you're looking at the Vladivostok from the bow, yeah, that's the same thing, right? Only that this thing's got 25-second reload, and that thing's got better range, 19-second reload, and it's very, very precise. I mean, not Slava levels of punishment, but I mean, the Slava is a bit special. But the firepower forward is exactly the same. Now, if you turn the Vladivostok sort of sideways, you get the rear turret, and then you get more firepower. You don't get that on the Borodino. But these two 180mm twin turrets, actually, if you look at the superstructure, kind of from the top here, you can see that they have a lot of clearance. So this thing can almost fire straight forward. Obviously not straight forward, because, there's a funnel in the way, but they have a lot of clearance in the rear because you don't have an actual rear turret. So these things have very good firing angles and have an almost 9-kilometer range and a 6-second reload. Don't underestimate these secondaries. They're quite useful. The AA is obviously utterly useless, but with double radar, you can be a really nasty surprise for some of the destroyers, because A, you're going to be bow in if you want it or not, because it doesn't make any sense to do anything else. And you've got these relatively rapid firing secondaries, and these are 180 mils, and they do hurt, and they are reasonably precise. Okay, let's look at the setup. You get the choice between main battery traverse speed, which is useless because what are you going to do? You bow in anyway. So why not just go for the range? Then you can put the historical camouflage on, which gives you main battery firing range. Which, all in all, together with I am using the precision mod here. You could go for reload maybe, but it's sort of the Richelieu situation. So if you lose one of your turret, half your firepower is gone. So you probably don't want that. You could actually, and this might not be a terrible choice, you could actually use the secondary battery mod to boost the reload even further on the 180s. And even though you only have 4 of them, they can swing around to very, very good angles, and they have a very good range. And then the rest of the setup is obviously the same. So that gets you to a range of over 15 kilometers, which is workable. Despite the fact that, well, these are Soviet guns, so they are not the most punchy at long range, because this is not the Slava. But you have a 19-second reload, and that is pretty decent. So, Commander, we have a defensive AA. Actually, we're more than a defensive AA. We don't have anything to deal with torpedoes, so you could go for additional defensive AA, but honestly, it's a def AA 1, and you don't have any large caliber AA, so it really doesn't make that much of a difference. So while I'm still taking the air defense expert, you could also even argue to just take Victorious Charge here. You do want probably the fire supremacy and the marksman for an additional precise aim. And the rest is just pretty much standard stuff. So I would honestly even be tempted to take the close quarters combat expert, because these secondaries are fun, and that'll give you another 15% dispersion buff on these things, and they're already pretty precise. So even though you only have 4 of them, you get a lot of the shots on target. This is kind of the theme of this shit, right? You don't have an awful lot of guns, but these guns get on target, which means that if you compare this, say, with the North Carolina, this thing can get 6 shots on target, where North Carolina can only get 2 or 3 on target at ranges. So that is just something to be taken into account. And you'd think, okay, it's only 4 secondaries, but 4 secondaries that are really reasonably precise and have a very good range, and that you can entertain yourself with while your mains are reloading, which does not take an awful lot of time. All right, I think we've covered everything, so let's get into some gameplay. First game, we are on Golden Channel against Monarch, Key, Ashitaka, Tallinn, Atlanta, Esyenyang, and Kagero. So a very nice mix, and off we go. A very nice mix, and if you are familiar with the Richelieu, with the French T8 Premium that also has 2 turrets forward, you're going to find yourself, well, in familiar territory, let me put it that way. Because this thing can play very, very similar, with the additional advantage that the Richelieu gets engine boosts, I think two charges, but nothing else. Whereas this thing has a relatively interesting set of useful things. Especially that radar can come as a really nasty surprise for some destroyers, or light cruisers for that matter, that think, aha, I am just going to smoke up here and then unleash hell at that thing and torpedo it. Anyway, we have a mines which appears to be taking the left flank, so I don't have to secure it, so I can get myself into the position next to that little ledge there on the island, and well, utilize my forward gun placement, because obviously, you know, there's never any need not to be bow in with this ship, unless you're turning it around, that is. She's reasonably quick, so not French levels of quick, but we can definitely make our way into the cap circle. I don't have angles right now because I'm actually sailing into position here. But we can place ourselves into the capture circle and start unleashing some fire at these guys over there. There are destroyers, 2 destroyers here, and that's the key. Manual aim up. Manual aim is again something I can really recommend doing on this kind of ship. You are starting to see take some damage, but oh, hello, Mr. Tallinn. But in this position, I can always just use the island to disengage from the people next to me. Nice flat broadside from Tallinn. At 10 kilometers precise aim up, shots out, and that could have been better. Only 4 shots on target. I think he was moving a little bit. This ship is suffering from the same problem as the Slava. Well, what do you mean problem, Terry? I thought these guns were very precise. Yes, exactly. That is the problem. I mean, if somebody just moves even a little bit, you tend to... I mean, look at the dispersion on this thing. Yep, yeah, there you go. The other problem obviously is, and this is why I said manual aiming is important, the other problem is that, hello Mr. Kagro, I am taking some high explosive spam here. I don't want to get torpedoed with my damage control on cooldown. Yeah, that hurt. Some of them were overpens, but you can get some semi-pens in. But what I was going to say, the other problem with the very precise guns is that they tend to land in the belt armor if you have the lock-on, due to the lock-on feature or auto-aim feature that pulls the shells towards the center of the enemy ship in order to ensure the maximum amount of hits, which is generally appreciated, but with extremely precise guns it's very noticeable that you are actually tend to end up in the belt armor, which is why against battleships I would really recommend using manual aim. We are not quite in angles for the secondaries, and I don't want to give any broadside here. But that cargo has just run aground, and yes, he's almost in range of my secondaries. But even with the armor piercing, I can actually get full penetrations on destroyers at that kind of range. Like I said, they hit reasonably hard, but you do have to be in sort of mid range, which means you can actually, as you can see, blap away destroyers. So that's both destroyers taken care of, which means the torpedo threat is out of the capture circle, which means we can now be a little bit more aggressive and maybe say hello to Mr. Atlanta over there and see what he does. But we're in no rush. We're holding the capture circle. They keep losing ships. And yeah, look at that dispersion. Isn't that beautiful? Obviously, as a blind shot. And hello, Mr. Monarch. Yeah, I need to actually angle against you people, because that's what I'm trying to do. But look at the angles that the secondaries are having. Even though I'm starting to turn the ship around, I can get these shells on target no problem, and they do reload. They do reload reasonably quickly. So even if you are angled, you can get these secondaries on target. There are some, I think, Atlanta torps, but that should be a dead key if my shells can make it there before. Nope, the Akizuki actually takes them out. But as you can see, we've very, very quickly also lost our hit points. And this is sort of where the balancing factor comes in. This thing doesn't have an awful lot of hit points and does not have the greatest armor in the world. So that's when your range comes in, because these guns can be fired at extreme ranges of like 15 kilometers and plus. And they might not be super effective, but if you can get manual aim up and the deck armor in, and that Monarch really wants me dead, that's when you Damacon in single fire, by the way. So with manual aim, if you can hit the deck plating, and look at the dispersion on these things, isn't it beautiful? Then then you can still do very, very reasonable amounts of damage. So while we are cleaning up, and I think the Monarch is the last ship there, and the Atlanta, let's see if we can get a kill on the Monarch. See, if you're running low on hit points, just back up. You know, you can still, get a kill on the Monarch at that range if you do manual aims. And that Atlanta is sitting within the capture circle. I don't think I can. I didn't need to get into radar range because his smoke screen expired, so I can literally just kill him if he's still alive by the time my shells get there, and that would be a negative. He is no longer alive. Yeah, very powerful ship. If you can engage and disengage, you can be bow in. The secondaries are actually really useful. And even though the armor is kind of meh and the hit point pool is on the low end, this sort of allows you to play to the strengths and, again, disengage and go into range if you need to. In the second battle, we are up against Bismarck, Gneisenau, Nagato, Cossack, Mayhem, Minsk, and Jervis. 4 destroyers in the enemy team and 3 battleships. And we're on Hourglass. So positioning, again, is going to be key here, and no key in this game. And using the forward placement of the guns to its effect, as well as using radar if necessary, and using the islands for shielding. So given that I am spawning on the western flank on our side, I am going to head over there. And next to that island. I do have an Akizuki, no, it's an Akatsuki, sorry. I do have an Akatsuki with me who can go scout. And I do have my secondaries ready in case any kind of enemy destroyers get spotted. And I can always, at closer ranges, switch over to the high explosive against destroyers. So I want to park myself next to that island because that gives me torpedo protection from the center where there are going to be destroyers. And I can use it to, if I get close enough to it, also to shield myself from enemy battleship shells coming in, and I can be bow in towards the eventual battleship threat that could be coming down this flank. Akatsuki goes a very risky route, because if he gets spotted there, he has nowhere to go, but it looks like he's getting through, and I am detected, so there is a destroyer, which means I need to stop here. Now, I do have an 11-kilometer range, so but radar up, let's see if we can spot something. Yep, there's the Jervis. Hello, Mr. Jervis, you have been radared. Shots out. And I'm going to switch over to the HE for now, because he is getting relatively close. He is smoking up, but there's also a Minsk coming. And while my guns are reloading, I can start using the secondaries. Now, I need to go a little bit forward to actually get the clearance of the island, but once that has happened, I can start using the secondaries. And I've got the mains loaded with the HE, so at this range I could probably go back again to armor piercing and be better off. Okay, so that's the Minsk and the Jervis pushed away. We do have battleships coming down this way as well. There is a Bismarck, so let's unload the HE onto that thing, and then switch back to the armor piercing. And just, keep sitting on this corner here. That's a Damakon. But the Bismarck is now busy with our destroyers, so I get free shots at that thing. And at this range, my guns are going to hurt. So that's kind of I would say like 7 to 9 kilometers is a really comfortable range for these guns. But you do need to aim by hand because of the high degree of precision. And these are the angles on the secondaries, and if I can lob over, I think the Bismarck is about to eat some torpedoes. No, I think they've missed, but he is still engaging the destroyers, which means I can just keep unloading at that thing. And okay, now I think he's started. Yeah, now he's seen me, and that was a nice hit for 9,000. So we do want to probably back off, but he's relatively low on hit points at this stage, and. Yep, that was a nice citadel and a Bismarck. Comfortable range, 7 kilometers for this ship. But I do need to back up a little bit, because there was a Jervis, I believe, somewhere there. And I'm not sure where he went. He's definitely still alive. Oh, no, he's on the other side. Okay. So torpedoes are incoming from, I think that was the Jervis. We might be taking one there, so let's heal up and then dodge the other one. But I think we can kill the Bismarck, and then it's just Jervis and Minsk that we need to deal with. So... let's get the guns on target again. And I think that is going to be a very dead Bismarck with that salvo. Yep, there he goes. Pop. Okay, the Jervis has just unloaded his torpedoes, but we can pop the radar. Yep, there he is. And get him in secondary range. Hello, Mr. Jervis. I mean, he's only got fuel smokes, but I did want to know where he was and if I had to dodge anything. So he is coming my way. I'm going backwards, and at this range, definitely the HE. I don't know if he has torpedoes away, but he has been firing. Yeah, he's been firing widespreads in the past, so I assumed he would keep firing widespreads, which means I might be taking 1 or 2 torpedoes here. And that's a flood. We can damage on that, be done with it. And there is the Minsk. And now we can, since we're already on the high explosive, do that to the Minsk at this range. And even though you only have 4 secondaries with that reload on them things, and as you can see with the penetration that they have against destroyers and the reload and the precision, you're having a lot of fun here. Okay, next up, Gneisenau. Full health Gneisenau. There's only 1 destroyer and that thing left, so he's probably planning to get into torpedo range, and I could just do the Richelieu thing and just, you know, back off. But where's the fun in that? I mean, we've won at this point, so we may as well have some fun with him and farm some more damage. I think let's get some shots out at long range and see that we can get the island cleared and do something about that Gneisenau. If you see me not being perfectly bow in, that's because I do want to get my secondaries on target. I'm not super afraid of the Gneisenau. I mean, he is going to do some damage to me, but well, I am going to do some damage back, so it should, all in all, it should be all right. And even if I go down, I've got other ships here, so let's give a little bit. I was on half health, and he did have the hit point advantage, so let's give a bit more angle to make sure that we can get our guns on target, and that we just have to dodge the inevitable torpedoes. Gneisenau's got a 5.4 kilometer range. This is not a historical camo Gneisenau, so no 5.6. That's why I'm already slamming her in reverse. Ow, that hurt, because the torpedoes are going to be coming my way from that direction probably if he dropped them. So that's why I'm already reversing. But I am running a little low on hit points here. But Gneisenau now also had to dodge torpedoes. And yep, there come the Gneisenau torpedoes. Akatsuki goes, "Get down, Mr. President," and takes a torpedo for me. Much appreciated, my little friend. So, 1 more salvo. I'm on 81 hit points. Can I kill the Gneisenau? Just not. But he now has Akatsuki problems, so he ignores me, which means... No, he does not. Okay. Fortunately, that's a Gneisenau. So yeah, nope. And he gets killed by the Miyoko, and I survive on 81 hit points. Because German dispersion go blah. So this is a very, very nice tier 8 premium. It reminds me a lot of the Richelieu. It's got pretty good utility. It's got the surprise up its sleeve with the radar. It does have its weaknesses, especially the low hit point pool and the relatively thin armor, and that the ship's pretty large for its size. But at the same time, it compensates for the low numbers of guns with precision. And if you fight at ranges where she's comfortable, so mid-range, then you're going to do pretty well. It's similar with the Richelieu with the 380s. So this is a good ship, and it's a fun tier 8. Even though you might be facing Atlanticos, but you outrange these things. Just don't get close and fire high explosive at them. And yeah, I've enjoyed playing the ship. It's a good ship. It's a balanced ship in my opinion, and worth it if you're in for something that is a little different from everything else. Anyway, that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.